Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will interview Very Worshipful Brother Jeffrey Brunson, DeMolay Grand Master.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual group of four hosts. I'm Matt Appel. I'm a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243 in Mountain Lake Terrace, Washington. We have Brother Craig Graham, who's a member of Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, BC. Very Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung, who's a member of Prince Charles number 153 in lovely Kelowna, British Columbia. And Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth, who's a member of King Solomon number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And to the four of us, we have added our Grand Master of DeMolay, Very Worshipful Brother Jeff Brunson. Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys asking me.
So I know Steve knows a lot about DeMolay. I sort of know a little about it. My son was in, but honestly not for very long. Although I guess technically he's still in DeMolay, but he's... I guess my basic question is, how does one become the Grand Master of DeMolay?
Not running fast enough. How about
that? I've heard you have knee problems. Is that what happened?
Yeah. It started way back when I joined DeMolay. And as I kept going through, I kept making friends. And I was elected in 2022 to Grand Junior, the following year Grand Senior, and this year Grand Master. And I go out June 21st of this year in sunny Orlando, Florida.
So it's kind of like being Grand Master of a Blue Lodge, where it's just for a 1-year job?
It's a 1-year job, progressive line, much like a Grand Master of a Grand Lodge. You got to know the right people. You've got to run without running or campaigning. You let people know what you do. You be a good guy, and hopefully everybody votes for you.
So Jeff, you're the Grandmaster International. Is that correct?
Yes, Grandmaster International.
So how many jurisdictions worldwide are there?
So there's 62 worldwide, okay, plus the independent Supreme Councils. Australia, Brazil, the Philippines, and DeMolay, Canada.
Okay, so there's like an international and then a national and subnational organizations as well. Like kind of.
Well, the four I mentioned are probably like a franchise. They pay a fee to us. They report to us every year, but they run their program modeled after the information that we give them and teach them.
Okay. And what's the youngest a boy can enter DeMolay?
A squire can join at 10, 9.5, 9, just depends how developed they are, how they can handle a social atmosphere of guys. DeMolay, you join at 12, and at 21, you're done. Okay. And hopefully decide to go on in the Masonic fraternity.
So how did you become a DeMolay? How did you get started in all this? And I assume that you obviously were a DeMolay before. I assume that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My best friend that I grew up with across the street from me, we ran the streets of Tacoma, actually our 2 blocks that we lived on. And his dad was a Shriner, and got him into Tacoma chapter DeMolay. And I heard all the cool, super duper wonderful things that he did. It seemed like he was gone every weekend and was going to the stance or going to a baseball game. I mean, he was doing all kinds of stuff. And he's a year and a half older than I. So for a year and a half, I was extremely jealous. And the day I turned old enough, I submitted my application. And the chapter, unfortunately, at that point only had 3 members. And so I had to wait until they had a larger ceremony where they could do my initiation. So I turned of age in October, and in May and June, I got my initiations. And from there, I was number 4, and nobody told me that, it's kind of weird to go ask your friends. So I started asking all my friends, and we built the chapter up. When I was master counselor at 15, my largest meeting I had 56 members at.
Wow.
So I invited a lot of people.
Is your next door neighbor still around?
He is. We're still good friends, and I see him every now and then. He's now an electrician.
Nice. Did you know Roger? He said Roger was part of DeMolay and Tacoma area.
Roger Nelson?
Nelson, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've known each other for many years.
Yeah. Interesting. Very cool.
Actually, that reminds me.
It's a small world.
Yeah, yeah.
I meant to say earlier, I neglected to say it when we were interviewing Roger Nelson as our last guest, that we sort of got onto this track of interviews where we've been going through the Freemasons for Dummies book, and there's a section in there on basically other bodies that are associated with Freemasonry. So we talked to Roger about Scottish Rite, and we're talking to you about DeMolay, and we're probably going to have a couple more folks on here, but I just sort of wanted to say that was how we got to where we are. I meant to say it when Roger was here, but kind of forgot for 3 episodes.
So in an interesting connection, DeMolay was started by Frank Sherman Land, who was the general secretary of Scottish Rite in Kansas City, Missouri. And Scottish Rite was our main sponsors when we began.
I did not know that. So then we have a Frank S. Land Lodge here in Washington also, right? Is that, I assume, related?
It's related, and I was the first master of that lodge. But yes, same guy.
And another interesting fact, Most Worshipful Jim Mendoza was the first Mason made and Master Mason, or just first Mason made at Frank S. Land?
He was part of our first class. We had 3 guys that joined, and he was the first to go through and be Grand Master. And another interesting fact, second time I was Master Counselor of Tacoma Chapter, Brother Jim Mendoza installed me as Master Counselor.
Oh, really?
So we go back. The stories I will never tell.
Jim you both had a lot of hair back then.
We both had hair. Yes, lots more hair.
It's fun to see the old pictures of Jim.
Yes. We traveled together a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. So can you tell the story a little bit? I mean, people could read it, of course, in the book if they want to do, but can you tell the story a little bit about how DeMolay was started from your perspective or from?
Sure. The easiest thing is we started with 9 DeMolays. Well, a baseball team takes 9 players. So that's really how we say DeMolay started. But Frank Land, wonderful guy. They called him a nurturing kind of guy. And where he lived in his neighborhood, he knew of a young man. And his dad had gone off to war and was killed in war. So he invited him to come work at the Scottish Rite. There was a lot of things to do. And they talked about different things and said, wouldn't it be cool to have a club of guys your age doing stuff? And it talked, and they introduced another friend, and that's where they built up to 9 guys that were all friends, and they started a club. They went through many different names. At one point, we were going to be known as the George Washington Club, because everybody looked at him as a father figure for young men. And they were sitting in the Scottish Rite Library, and Frank Lamb pulled out a book and talked about the Knights Templar and read them the story of Jacques DeMolay, the last Grand Master of DeMolay, and the brotherhood that he had, and all the trials and tribulations he went through. And at that point, the guys were sold. Thus, we became called DeMolay. And that was in March of 1919. In April of 1919, we held our first official meeting, and we have grown ever since then.
Very cool. Very cool. I know there's a lot of things happening in that early 1900s. There's a lot of Freemasonry happening too. Even there's a lot of clubs and organizations, Boy Scouts, and a lot of things were happening at that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And DeMolay is the oldest of all of those. First one really to be started. Um, they came after us, seeing what we were doing at DeMolay and tried to pattern after that. Another interesting story, we started very much connected with Scottish Rite because of the relationship with Frank Land and all his friends and buddies. The writer of our ritual and everything were Scottish Rite brothers. But the first Grand Master of DeMolay recognized that there were Scottish Rite valleys in bigger places. It was not all over small towns and everything. Everybody kind of came together. And he recognized if we were going to grow, he needed to make friends with Grand Lodges and Masons. And thus, that's where our really tie with Masonry came in. Was a secondary piece, but it was for us to be able to grow into those small towns because there's young men there too.
And so I think I'm going back about 8 topics now, but we said about the ages to join. Do you have to be related to a Mason to join? Who can join, I guess is my question.
A young man with a belief in a supreme being and fits into the age of good character can join DeMolay. Does not have to have Masonic lineage with them. We do have a sponsor that is generally a Master Mason for a young man. But other than that, no relationship tie.
Okay, interesting. So obviously those first 9 guys didn't necessarily have those relationships either. So
Nope, not at all. Yeah, their relationship was, knowing Frank Land, getting together and growing it. One of the things we always talk about, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first? Did Frank Land have this idea of building this worldwide, 3 million member organization, or was he just trying to be a good guy and help out some fatherless young men and teach them to be um, good men and productive in society? And we all fall towards the productive in society side to this.
interesting. So you just said there are 3 million DeMolays worldwide.
Over 3 million have gone through DeMolay since 1919.
I see. Do you know about how many current members there are?
If you include the independent Supreme Councils, there's about just under 100,000 active DeMolays currently.
Wow.
That's a lot, yeah.
Our largest is Brazil.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
And
Brazil is going through something of a Masonic renaissance these days. It's the one jurisdiction in the world that is growing very, very quickly, and I can see that. And it's their numbers, their average age of Freemasons down there skews way lower than any other country in the world right now, and they're having a time of it down there. And so it doesn't surprise me that Brazil is the young men's component of it is right up there as well.
I attended the World Conference of Grandmasters in Brazil for I don't remember how to pronounce the name, back in November. And it was interesting to talk to all these different countries. And then I would turn to the Brazil guys. And yes, the age dropped 40 years. And we got to spend an extra week and went to their executive officers conference. And yeah, the average age of their executive officers were 30. Here, the average age is 50, 55. But but wonderful. The Masons there are growing fast. And if a young man wants to get an advantage in life, go to college, get a job, they need to be part of the Masonic family. And DeMolay is the entree into that. I attended chapters that had 50, 60, 70 members at every function. The one thing that they do differently than us is they are very family and community service oriented. It's all about the family and the family doing things together. And it's all about what they can do in the community and helping others. And that's, boy, I tell you, it was a life-changing experience for all of us down there. And we've tried to figure out how we can start it here. And it's ingrained into their culture. It's going to take a lot to really bring that back to anywhere else besides where they are.
So I feel like I'm jumping all around with my questions, so I apologize. But
That's all right.
you became a Mason just sort of as an extension of your involvement in DeMolay as a teenager?
Yes. Funny story. I actually joined a different lodge than my father belonged to. I joined the lodge that was supporting my DeMolay chapter. And that was what drove me to go. My dad's lodge was filled, I hope none of them are listening, a bunch of old men, and they acted like a bunch of old men. And the lodge that my chapter worked with were younger guys, and it was just a natural extension. The day I turned 21, just like the day when I turned old enough to join DeMolay, I handed in my application and I started my way.
One of the
And then,
few guys that started and are still there.
yep, I was master of my lodge at 25. I helped start a brand new lodge at 27, 28, and kept going. I was a young uh, deputy to the Grand Master and still consider myself young.
What lodge was that you joined, Jeff?
I joined Fairweather Lodge number 82 that meets at the Tacoma Scottish Rite. And I was master. Uh, I followed a past master counselor at DeMolay, and behind me there were three past master counselors at DeMolay that went through all together. So it was great experience. Made lots of friends, lots of brothers, and I still associate with them as often as I can. And then started Frank S. Land Lodge in 1997.
And can you talk a little bit about the mission of Frank S. Land Lodge?
Frank S. Land Lodge, there were a few guys that wanted to continue their DeMolay experience. They were in their late 20s, 30s, and they missed the excitement of doing different things. I was going to say wild and crazy things, but it was just doing different things and involving the family and being involved in the community. And they missed the tight knit brotherhood. We wanted to be together. We wanted to do things together. And so over about a year of drinking beer and having fun and started just, we sit in a bowling alley and talk about it. And we got the gumption to apply to become a lodge. And that was a unique experience going through that whole process of starting a lodge, not something I ever thought I would do. And we grew and grew up to about 100 members when we applied for our charter. And we still, to this day, our mission is to help young people, not necessarily DeMolay, but to make sure that we're involving our kids and the youth groups, doing what we can for the youth groups.
Your members there, then, Jeff, are you still getting a lot of ex-DeMolays that are coming up into your lodge, into Frank S. Land Lodge now?
About a third of them currently. You start with knowing all your buddies. And so you start bringing in DeMolay brothers. But then I brought in my buddy that I knew his wife through Job's daughters. And he wasn't a Mason nor a senior DeMolay. So I brought him in, and then somebody else brought in their friend and somebody else brought their friend. And pretty soon we'd become a mix of supporters of all the youth groups and then just people that we know. We do a pretty good job of social media and we get calls and referrals and we get referrals from other lodges. Somebody's joined a lodge and said, I love this lodge. My dad belongs there or my uncle belongs there, but I want to come do some things with younger guys.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, us younger guys then have gotten older now, but we've been replaced by younger guys. I would say we're a 40 to 50-year-old is our average age.
Nice. That's actually a really good demographic.
Yeah.
What I was just curious about something, Jeff, too, with what are the individual DeMolay units called? Is it a chapter or?
They're called chapters.
Okay, chapters. So the boys come into it and you age out at 21. So what's the highest you can get sort of in DeMolay before the adults kind of have to take over? Like, how does that work internally?
The highest you can get. So we don't have additional degrees. There's just 2 degrees when you get initiated. In a local chapter, you can be master counselor, and then you can be a mentor for the young men. You can run for most of the jurisdictions have a mid-level, either regions or divisions or leagues, kind of role, whatever they call it. And that's overseeing 4 to 8 chapters. And then you can run for jurisdictional officer. Most jurisdictions have between 3 and 5 jurisdictional officers. And then you work your way up to state master counselor. I was state master counselor. I was 20 when I was state master counselor. So I turned 21 while I was state master counselor and joined Masonry while still an active DeMolay. That was before the age was lowered in Washington, at least. There are honors that you can get. You don't necessarily work towards. The Chevalier degree is an honor that can be bestowed upon you by your chapter. But we also have a merit bar system. More recognizably, scouting, you'll see them with the patches for different things. We have a similar thing with merit bars. There are 18 or 19 different areas that you can earn merit bars in. And then all kinds of awards you can win. There's ritualistic awards for memorizing any of the parts in our ritual and presenting those. We have sporting events that we have trophies and tournaments for. So lots of different ways you can, reach higher levels in the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can become an international officer too.
Okay. I remember my first sort of experience with DeMolay was in my mother lodge in Vancouver. We had one of the Vancouver chapters come out, and one of the boys gave a lecture, which I think it's kind of a set piece, and it's sort of the early history, and it's Frank Land, and I think he and the boys went to New York or something, and or they went somewhere, and a bunch of them ended up in a police paddy wagon, but it turned out that the constable on the paddy wagon was actually a Mason and was just bringing them back to the hotel. It was, but it was it was very, very well delivered lecture, and it was very, very instructive. So, reminding it, there's obviously, even in such a younger organization, there's still a lot of history to it.
Yes, absolutely. We have 2 big performance ceremonies that we do. One's called the Ceremony of Light, and it explains the 7 core values of DeMolay, along with the candles. Beautiful ceremony. And then a flower talk, and that's dedicated to mothers of our DeMolays. and utilizes red and white flowers in that. And usually at one of those, there's not many dry eyes left.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That was
That-
my very first piece of ritual I ever learned was the flower
oh
talk.
my gosh.
My
I
first,
envy you. That is a big part.
I got picked up. So I got picked up for conclave. This was my second month as a DeMolay, and we were going from Vancouver to Nanaimo. On the way to the ferry, I was given this piece of paper. He said, "There's a competition when we get there. You got 2.5 hours, maybe three." And I nailed it. I
Oh
won the
my.
competition, and that started my ritual journey. And
That's awesome.
if I think about it, I could probably recite it off the top of my head any given day.
It gets ingrained into you.
Now, little sad note to that was at 8, my mother shipped us off to live with my dad, and I didn't speak to her for years, not until I was 16. And so to me, she was dead to me. So I always took the white flower in um, spite for her, right? And I mean, I've learned a lot of other lessons now that, and I reached out to her at 16. But yeah, a very emotional talk, and I highly recommend any DeMolay. That's the first one they should learn. Mind you, the ceremony of light, the 7 cardinal virtues, something to live by.
Yes. And your story about your mother is a perfect example of what DeMolay is about. We all have lessons to learn, and we all grow through those lessons and grow through our experiences and follow those virtues. And hopefully it makes us a better man as we get older.
Yep, DeMolay, best thing that ever happened in my life. I say that all the time. I was going down the wrong side of the tracks really fast, and then a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you want to meet some girls?" At 14 years old, yeah,
Yeah.
dumb question, right? But there I found a man who was our chapter dad, Ben Thompson, and he actually gave a shit about me and my well-being, and he showed it every day, and it was an amazing connection that was, deep for years and years and years. And, like you, I'm still in touch with that core group from Beaver chapter from years ago. Unfortunately, we're going to be getting together for a funeral from one of our brothers on the 5th of April. But we get together for those things. We get together for, milestone birthdays, stag parties, those things. And we're all spread out all over Washington and Vancouver and Alberta, but we're still like this.
Yeah. Lifelong brotherhood. That's what we are. And the friends I've made over the years, all over the country. There's a group of some past day master counselors from Washington. They hold a poker party, an online poker party. And it's not about playing poker. It's about, us on a Zoom call, giving each other crap and catching up on things. They just had one here last week, and we get guys from all around the country that come and log on to that, and they love doing that. It's really awesome.
So yeah, the bonds of brotherhood that you guys are talking about. I mean, that's what we're generally shooting for in masonry. There are some other things, I
Yep.
suppose, but and the fact that at least for the two of you and this bond is continuing it's really impressive. It speaks well to the organization that they're ingraining that in those boys. With that, we've approached the end of our half hour already, which is surprising. It seems like it went right by. But well, first of all, on behalf of Craig and David and the other guy, Stephen, and myself. Jeff, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate having you.
Absolutely. I enjoy talking about the things I've learned and the things I've done. And I just got to add real quick, that lifelong brotherhood. When I joined Masonry, all those guys knew me as a kid, and I've grown up with them as a second father. And I feel sometimes I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I got 50 fathers that have, taught me the way. And yeah, it's a lifelong brotherhood, no matter where you are.
You're here. Well, thank you for being on the show, and thank you all for listening. And we always appreciate your comments on the various places one can comment. And with that, on behalf of the four of us and Jeff, thank you for listening to the Working Tools Podcast. Goodbye.